Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Warrior Spotlight, where the stories are real and the emotions are raw. Tonight, we have Mary Beth Wright. You'll find out more about her in a bit. And then we have Brittany Taylor on the show tonight. We left off a veteran tonight. I guess I could fill the role of the veteran, I suppose, if I had to. Yeah. But welcome back to another episode. Let's talk about some things that happened between the shows last week and this week. We started a wellness program. Rain is in charge of the wellness program, and she set up, we had this really nice girl. Her name was Victoria, and she is with the Connection Cove, and she did some Reiki out here. And I believe she had like 6 sessions with veterans, and she set up over on the little deck back there. The veterans just absolutely loved it. They thought it was great. It was a great space for her. Yeah. And so I believe Rain said she's coming back next month too. And so, yeah, it's a great thing. The veterans absolutely loved her. So I was like, sweet. Yeah. And then on Saturday we had a wedding. So this was our second wedding. The first wedding, because when Sean and Kathleen asked me if they could get married here, I was like, sure. Yeah. You know, he's been through the program, and I was like, yeah, I think it's amazing. Right. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking they were going to have a wedding like Melissa had a wedding, right? She had like 12 people, and then they ate snacks or something in here afterwards, right? No.
Full blown.
Sean and Kathleen had a full blown wedding. They did.
It looked beautiful.
Oh my gosh. It was and it was black attire. Black attire. Yeah. And it was so hot that day. Uh-huh. But it was absolutely beautiful. They had the DJ, they had what's it called?
Appetizers, orders.
Yeah, cocktail hour.
Cocktail hour.
Yeah, so they had like a cocktail hour in between, and then they had their dinner, which was fantastic, and everything. So they had chairs set up by the big tree out back, and then they did the wedding, and then they hurried up and switched and set tables up back there so everybody could eat back there. And then when the dancing took place, that's where all the dancing took place. And then something I thought was really, really cool. They now have become a blended family. She's got a little one, and he's got several kids. And it was just the coolest ceremony. They had they brought somebody in to perform the ceremony, and they had this glass jar, and they filled it with white sand, which represented God, right? The foundation. And then each person put their sand in, right, on top of each other. And then the person hosting it for them put more on top for God's protection, right? Mm-hmm. And then they'll just seal it up, right? But it was so cool because all of their colors, and it really blended their family. And I was like, what a great ceremony, you know? Aww. Yeah, it was beautiful.
I love a good wedding.
And her dress, everything about it was just absolutely beautiful. Now they're enjoying, I believe, Hocking Hills for a week, which they're both very athletic. And so, Nice. Absolutely amazing. Nice. Yeah. Okay. Oh, this Saturday, we have what's called a full warrior wellness forage, and you said foraging 101 with Kendall. Mm-hmm. You're going to go to that.
I'm going, and my daughter's going. We want to learn more about that. My daughter's actually a few steps ahead of me. She's done some foraging, but we want to learn more.
So Kendall, which you guys know who he is by now. He stays here, but he is like this chemist in the woods, right? He can walk into the woods. He can see the bark. He knows what kind of bark it is and what natural things the bark cures or whatever. I don't know. He's found like 15 different kinds of mushrooms here. Right. And
I'm drinking mullein tea that he foraged.
Yes. He makes his tea. He does all these incredible things, right? And it's just like, wow. And so between him and Rain, they put this foraging class together, and it's full. There's like 12 people in it, right?
Wow.
So they're so excited about it. Yeah. And I was talking to Mary Beth about it earlier, and she's like, I know, my daughter and I are doing it. And I was like,
we're getting in on this.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, so that'll be pretty exciting to see how that turns out. Last week he stuck a little GoPro on him, and he went traipsing through the woods. So we don't have that quite put together yet. But he said when he was out, he'd come back. He's like, I would get close to a mushroom, and I would take it down and go, this is what kind of mushroom it is. And then he found these little strawberries that he was picking along the way. So it's like,
how fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I absolutely love that for him. I thought it was great.
Who knew so much was out there?
All these like treasures that we wouldn't have known about, right?
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, for sure.
Not me.
not me either. I think it's beautiful, but I'm not eating the mushrooms or drinking the bark tea or whatever. And he will tell you everything it cures too. I'm not even kidding you. Okay, so we have our 6th annual Warrior fundraiser coming up, and that is going to be at Leroy's Hall, same place we had it last year. It was an incredible event last year. We had over 200 people in attendance. This year, we're anticipating it to be even bigger. We are still looking for sponsors to help us with that event. You can find all the information on our website to include the sponsorship opportunities and ticket prices. Tickets are $80 per person or $150 per couple. So we'd absolutely love to have you there. And then the next thing is August 9th. I talked last week. I don't really want to go beyond August. I don't want to talk anything beyond August because then we're getting into the fall, right?
Yeah.
But it's our 2nd annual Wheels for Warriors, our car show. That's going to be held here at the Whitefoot Stoneco Park, Community Park. We held it there last year. Some really great individuals headed it for us and basically ran the whole thing. Julie and I sold some cookies for the kids group, and that's just about all Julie and I did. It was great. We raised like $2,500 last year for our first year, 125 cars. It was amazing. So be looking for that on August 9th. All the registration and all the information is on our website for that. Okay, ladies, I'm going to do an introduction of each one of you, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about who Mary Beth is, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's your history?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to switch it over to you, do the same, and then we're going to come back and then kind of mix up the conversation a little bit.
Cool.
Okay, this is what I pulled, so bear with me. And correct me if I have any of it wrong.
Okay.
So I tried to look on your sheets here.
Mm-hmm.
So clinical social worker, therapist, LMSW. What's that mean?
Licensed Master of Social Work.
Okay, we can get into that in a minute. EGALA certified mental health specialist, and you are the lead mental health specialist for our organization here. And I found something that said, and if things have changed, please add to it. I specialize in trauma and PTSD, women issues, and spirituality.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about helping people of all ages overcome the impact of mild to severe trauma. I'm certified in EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which we will talk about that in a bit. A well-researched therapeutic tool found to be effective in the process of healing trauma events and gaining realistic self-perspective. I help build strong relationship skills, which I love that. So who's Mary Beth? Tell us who you are.
Well, I think you captured it pretty well. That's a good part.
Yeah.
That's a good start. Yeah. So I love, I've been a clinical social worker for like 20 some years, a long time. Yeah. I'm an outpatient private practice in Monroe. And of course, I've been here for going on 5 years, I think, working with the EGALA program and the veterans here, which I love. I'm also a Reiki master. I really like the body, mind, spirit, anything to do with body, mind, spirit connection and helping us heal on all levels and understanding all levels. Mm-hmm. So, and like you were mentioning earlier, I love nature and I love being outdoors. And pretty much captures it.
Okay. So some of your focus areas are PTSD and trauma, right? And
absolutely.
And you do this, even though you are part of our organization here, you do this for other populations and other environments, correct?
I do. In outpatient practice, I work with children and adults and even couples. I find EMDR to be helpful in working with couples as they support each other on that journey. They can understand each other at a different level. Mm-hmm. And it just increases the compassion and the empathy that they have for each other. Mm-hmm. So EMDR is a really large part of my practice.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. So why did you want to get into the mental health field?
I think it has a lot to do with just, growing up, I was really close to my older brother, who's 9 years older than me, and he was a psychology major. And he would come home from college, he went away to college, and tell us all these stories about like his internship. And I was really, I think, impressed and touched by what he did. Mm-hmm. And I think also going into this field is a way to sort of make sense of your own life. And so I found it interesting and helpful. So,
and you're one who is constantly evolving. Right?
I love learning. And that's one thing I love about this field is there's just always so much to learn. I was just talking to Brittany a minute ago about now I'm learning deeper breath work, right? Biodynamic breath work, because I'm wanting to always keep evolving and growing. Yeah.
And it's endless of what you can do, right? Yeah. For sure. So is EMDR your favorite part of the practice and favorite thing that you do in the practice?
EMDR is definitely a game changer. I was really burned out. I almost thought about leaving the field. And then a friend of mine told me about EMDR, and I learned EMDR, and I could quickly see that this is a game changer. This is what I've been looking for. It's not just thinking, it's not just your thoughts, it's, body, mind, spirit. And it's really changed my practice, and it is the largest part of my practice. There's very few clients that we don't end up doing some EMDR with. Even if it could be about trauma, it can also be used for like I've got to give a speech, I'm having a lot of anxiety. So we do some work around that.
So it could be used in the corporate world then?
It could be.
Right? Okay. So I asked you this earlier about group settings. Is group settings typically a place that it could be found, or what would be the venue for that? You
can use EMDR with groups, especially like when the IMDRIA, the organization associated with EMDR, will maybe goes into other countries that are places of war, and they can't service people one-on-one, so they do group work, and they do bring in EMDR. I've only mainly done EMDR with couples, and sometimes with adopted children and their parents. We'll kind of do it together. But it can be used in groups.
Let's talk about the difference between being an EGALA mental health specialist and what your quote unquote normal practice looks like. Apples and oranges, right?
Right. It's very different. So I think I kind of sometimes I think I'm sort of incorporating some of what I've learned from EGALA in my private practice. But the EGALA model is very much driven by the client, and you're externalizing the problem and you're creating it so you can work through it and resolve it with the help of the horses, the battle buddies. So it's different. There's some overlap, but it's I love the EGALA model. I think it's
So that's what you do here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's literally taking the problem outside of yourself and looking at it, and you can do so much with that. And I do think it brings about organic change.
And you work with an equine specialist. You work in a team, right? Horses, the equine specialist.
Thank God, because I love the horses, but as you know, when I first started, I was quite nervous around them. So the equine specialist adds so much to the team. Not just in understanding the horses, but in understanding the therapeutic process too. So
So I have to share the story. When I first asked Mary Beth to come on board, and I said, okay, I want to send you to EGALA training. And she came home from that, because it's completely different, right? Because EGALA is really very minimal talking, where typical practice is you're having lots of conversation, right? And she's like, I can't do it.
I was overwhelmed.
Yeah. I was like, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Yes, you can.
And you were right. It just took time.
It takes time. And the biggest part is that we try to do the best that we absolutely can here, right? But keeping in the best interest of the client, right? And so we would never do anything intentionally to distract the client from what they're trying to achieve or anything like that. So what's it been like working with veterans for you?
I have really enjoyed it. I feel like I've learned so much about the veterans and the struggles that they go through, reintegrating into civilian life. And I've just gained a greater appreciation of all that they go through. But I find the veterans to be so welcoming and generous, and it's been, I'm really glad that I'm a part of this program.
Has there been anything that has surprised you in working with veterans? Or let me ask a flip side of that. So do you see a lot of similarities between their stories, not necessarily the technicalities, but the overall?
Yeah, I think there's common themes. Of how experiences impact them, and sometimes things start in childhood, and then things also happen in the military. I think one of the biggest surprises is just sometimes the trauma that veterans go through in the military itself. So
and that's probably been eye-opening to you.
It has been. It has been.
They did what?
Right.
That's not how I pictured the military working.
Oh, I can believe that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, well, awesome. So we're gonna flip over to you for a minute.
Okay.
I don't have quite the story for you, but we're gonna work on that. So, Brittany Taylor you are a licensed massage therapist, correct?
I am.
Okay, and then you are the owner of Breakthrough Wellness.
Yep.
And I have known you. We have been networking referral partners for probably the last 3 years in BNI, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so you share space with a chiropractic office, right?
Yep. Currently renting a space from a chiropractor. Yep.
Okay. Who's Brittany Taylor?
All right. So I actually went to school for accounting. Thought I was going to be an accounting major. No.
No.
But during that time, after high school, I had a lot of pain, like with working out. So anything that was like running, jumping, things like that, my calves would cramp up, or anything squatting or anything related to like lunges, my low back would hurt. And like to the point where like I could not work out. I had to stop and literally let it calm down. And I didn't understand why. I didn't understand what was going on. They would try to teach me the right posture, and I could not do that. It was just super tight. And so I kind of got interested in massage because I wanted to learn more about the body, figure out what's going on, and just feel better personally. And so my goal with going into massage was always to help my clients get out of pain. I never wanted to do the spa experience, rub oil on you. I mean, it has good benefits, but that just wasn't what I do. So I wanted to focus more on the pain. So my clients, when they come in today to see me, their main goal is always they have some kind of pain somewhere in their body and they want to fix it. So I get a good history of like a medical history, like trauma. So that could be a broken bone, stitches, surgery, an accident, things like that. And all of that can kind of get stored in the body until it gets worked out. So I get a good intake form. I do some different muscle testing, and that kind of guides my sessions. And then I do the massage, depending on what comes up in the muscle testing.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of helps narrow into the root cause. So like an easy example I always give, people always have those knots in the back of their neck. And they're like, I just need you to massage right here. I go to see all the massage therapists. Nobody can get it worked out. Big ol' knot. And then I test and it's never there. It's always somewhere else. Jaw, front of neck, pec, somewhere in there. You hit the right spot. By the time I get to that area, it's pretty much released.
Meaning like if it's in the jaw, that you could be clenching your jaw or something.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, if it's like all the tension in the jaw, that could just be pulling you forward. And so you're locked up in the back because it has to support you or you just fall over. Right. So it's usually locked for a particular reason.
So I want to interrupt you here.
Yeah.
My apologies. So through you being a licensed massage therapist, and you said your focus was to get people out of pain, and you've really targeted this piece of what you do, right? And so did this just come organically to you? Have you taken special classes to take to figure out how to pinpoint stuff? Okay.
Yeah, because in massage school, it's really just how to do a Swedish relaxing massage.
Okay.
And you learn a lot about the body, but that's pretty much all you're certified to do after school. I actually was really lucky. The person who I was seeing for my massage, like when I was still in accounting, she actually kind of got me into it, and she was going down the path of what I do today. So her, another person she worked for, kind of like my mentor. So I kind of got lucky finding them and following in their steps.
Is there a name specifically for it? Any training or?
Yeah. People always ask like, what type of massage? And it's not what you think. It's not deep. Therapeutic doesn't do justice. So, I mean, I could list, I was telling Mary Beth earlier, I could list the different courses I've taken. So I've taken several different courses. The titles probably wouldn't mean much to most people, but basically different courses to help me learn my muscle testing, to help me learn how to test if a certain muscle is activated or not activated, what the different patterns mean in the body. I think
this part is critical to share, right? Because all this does is it validates and it helps, state who you are, that you're taking these courses. You're just not making it up as you go.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah. I've had lots of,
I can figure this out.
No. But even some of the courses, like they could teach you how to muscle test, but they could teach a chiropractor how to muscle test. They could teach a yoga instructor how to muscle test. So incorporating it into the massage, that's come a lot of my mentors doing it and teaching me how to incorporate it into the massage is huge. But no, few different kinds of modalities for either the muscle testing, how to release, going in and releasing. It's like people are like, oh, is this like acupressure? Or are you finding the pressure points? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I've never really learned pressure points. I just know like palpation. So my testing is taking me to your
What is
jaw.
palpation?
Oh, like, like you're
Okay.
palpating, you're feeling the
Okay.
muscle. I don't know. That's probably weird.
No, could you get right here, please?
This is not what I do. Anyways, so say the testing took me to your jaw.
Uh-huh.
So then I'm palpating, I'm feeling, and I
Uh-huh.
bet, oh, this muscle's tight. And then I've just through practice have figured out like how to release that muscle. So that's when people are like, oh, is this like, are you hitting pressure points? I'm like, I don't know. This is just tight. I'm just releasing it. And then retesting. And then usually people are strong or stronger, or then it can take me to a different point. So sometimes like in order for something to release, you have to release certain things in the right order.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm struggling to get a muscle to release, sometimes I have to go to a different spot first.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get one to release. And sometimes they all just let go if you hit the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the testing helps me go into the right order. So I'm never just starting with somebody's head and working my way down. It really just depends what comes up in the test.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then in addition to that, I'm not even going to try to get the acronyms right of that test that
My HTMA?
yeah.
I
Talk
knew
about
where
that.
you were going. Okay. So I help educate people in minerals. So minerals is a huge portion of like, or a big part of how you feel. If you're deficient in your minerals, so like magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium, there's more, but like those are the main ones we start with. If you're deficient in those, you can have a lot of pain. So if somebody comes to me and they say, Brittany, I have a headache, I need you to massage my neck, but it's constant. They always have headaches. It could be a mineral deficiency. And
So what triggered you to
do
go
that.
into that? Mm-hmm.
I worked with somebody who did HTMAs, the hair tissue mineral analysis, and found out I was deficient. I supplemented with like one thing at the time, and like back pain that I was having that I couldn't get rid of went away. I think I was pregnant at the time, and I always get carpal tunnel when I'm pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
That, I don't know if it went away because I was pregnant, but I got so much better.
Mm-hmm.
I felt more loose, more flexible. It's just, so that's when I kind of learned that minerals is a huge part. If people are coming to me for pain, then that's something huge to look at.
So what can they anticipate? How does somebody have the test? What do they have to do? What's it look like? All that stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, they could just do the test standalone, but normally most people are coming to see me for the pain, and then we just have that conversation
Sure.
in session. Sometimes just with what they're telling me, I'm like, oh, that's those symptoms that you're describing sounds like a mineral deficiency issue. So like the headaches, cramping, jointness, stiffness. If their history is like for the calcium, we've kind of talked about calcium.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to talk about that one because
I think that's going to be a good one. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So with the calcium, that should be in your bones and your teeth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people tell me like, oh, osteoporosis or weakening bones or root canals, lots of cavities. And I'm like, we've got something going on with your calcium, and that needs to be addressed. But the thing with calcium is when you can have what they call a calcium shell. So when I get your report back on the HTMA, if it is super high, it's what they call a calcium shell. And what that is when you go through maybe a big trauma or lots of little micro traumas for a long period of time and you're super stressed, your body literally can pull the calcium from your bones and like store it, like build up around your joints, around your bones, and it's literally trying to protect you from whatever that stressor is. That's why they call it a calcium shell. They're literally like trying to build a shell around you. And so that's, again, when I listen for the signs of like the bone, like the osteoporosis, things like that, or the teeth or the joint stiffness or things like that, then we can start to talk about like, oh, you might have a calcium shell. So like, we just did yours. Calcium shell, right?
Right.
Makes sense. Probably had some kind of trauma or stress or whatever, right? And so I'm like, well, Jamie, look at what this calcium shell does. It's a big emotional thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have this calcium shell, it can make it hard for you to process emotions. It could make stress, like stressful situations could be more stressful for somebody who has this calcium shell. And hard to like feel more in tune with your emotions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big emotional component. It can come from the stress, and then all of the things, right? You could have teeth issues, you could have bone problems, they could just build up, and then you could feel more stiff and more aches and pains and all of the things from that calcium buildup. And so, I mean, working on that we can talk about your stress, but there's supplements you can take to help support the calcium to go back into the bones and the teeth where it belongs.
And since we're talking about this a little bit, I want to talk because I loved what you said. I don't understand it yet because we haven't gotten that far, but the uranium.
Yeah.
Right. So I have high levels of uranium, right? And then you talked about detoxing, and there's a certain way to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
what's
what's interesting is normally on a first test, we don't see a lot of the mineral or the metals. So we'll back up just real quick. So with the metals, when you're deficient in your minerals, your body will hold on to those metals because it could use parts of them to make up for where you're deficient. But also, when you're super deficient, your body doesn't have the energy to let the metals go. So you hold on to it. So a lot of times for a first test, you'll see somebody deficient in their minerals and very minimal metals. And so when we start to balance the minerals, then the metals might start coming out. That's your body's way of letting them go. So for you being deficient in your minerals and then your uranium being through the roof, so that one was a first for me. So I'm still kind of diving in. But when it comes to detoxing your metals, you first have to start with balancing your minerals because you have to support your body. So going through a detox, if you're not ready, could just make you feel like crap because you're bringing it all up. So it starts with balancing those minerals, and just kind of those main ones we start with: the calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. And once you kind of get strong naturally, we might see those metals come out, be released, or we could talk about like a binder, or once your minerals are more balanced, we could talk about a stronger way to detox that out. But yeah, starts with balancing those minerals just to support you through it.
And I like what you said too, through this process. You're like, I've never seen it before, but I'm looking into it, right? So you don't just go, well, this is their sheet, good luck, right? You really want to be able to tell the client what is happening with them and understand it and educate yourself on it.
Well, I took a course for minerals, a pretty
What was it called?
big course, HTMA experts, and then I stayed on to be in the masters. So with staying on in the masters, I get to submit a case every week and experts review it. So that's what I'm going to be doing for this one and getting their opinion on it. I would imagine it'll be like any other metal, right? We start by balancing and supporting you, and then we can look into what that detox, like a metal detox, would be. So I feel like that's going to be where we start in the answers, but I love that I have them to like, hey, this is new. Love some feedback.
So now we're going to start to blend the two. Okay. I put together a couple things, and so I want to read them because I think what the two of you do, especially, and we're obviously talking veteran world. That's where we're at, right? What you do in triggering the pain as somebody's going through the EMDR process at the same time is just life-changing, right? Life-changing. And so I just kind of want to read something here real quick, and then we'll get into your thoughts and theories and stuff like that. Effective pain management plays a vital role in veterans' mental health recovery. Chronic physical pain can intensify symptoms of anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress, creating barriers to emotional healing. By addressing pain through comprehensive individual strategies, veterans can experience improved sleep, reduced stress, and greater capacity to engage in therapy in the daily life. Managing physical pain is not just about comfort, it's a critical step toward restoring hope, stability, and overall well-being. So when I first came to you, I had said stress through the roof, right? But I had talked about this bar between my shoulders. And this, like another bar going from the back of my neck to the back, right? And I would have bet anything there was something wrong, right? Not just muscles or lack of mineral, because it literally felt like there was a bar there, right? Yeah. And so let's talk about it, like my first visit with you.
Jamie. So your first visit, no matter how I tested her, it hurt. I couldn't test. It was painful. So that makes it hard to get a good reading. Anywhere I touched on her body, she was jumping off my table. So your first session, I massaged your skull, literally her skull. And that was painful.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
was a lot.
Yeah.
And that's all I could do. And it was just light, and it was just literally the skull. That's all I could touch. That's the only thing we could do the first session. Because I don't know if it was a trust thing, right? I feel like the more your body got used to it, the more you trusted through it, or if it was just you were just that stressed that that's all it could be. That's all I could do. I think the next time you came in, it was still a lot of that, but I was able to move into, and I think it was a couple sessions before you even responded to some muscle testing, right? Because it would just hurt your back.
Yeah.
And so I think we were a few sessions in before we moved past just kind of skull, neck, jaw area and able to test and do more like core, or even a few sessions before we flipped you over and even got to your back.
Yeah. Because when I walked in there, I said, "It's really my neck," and she goes, "That's not where we're focusing. This is my office."
Right.
I was like, "Yeah, that's my girl right there."
Well, we did focus on
This is my party. I'll tell you how it works.
and it's like we did your neck felt better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Without me touching it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I hear you. But also
I'm the expert in
we'll do it my way.
And I've seen you almost every week for probably 3 months, maybe.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. And your goal isn't to keep clients in a weekly session.
I know I keep
Right.
trying to move you to 2 weeks and you won't let me. Like, you're feeling better. I think we can do 2 weeks. You're like, no, every week.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
So one thing that I've learned through this process with you is really, like, I cannot explain the difference it has made in my mental health, the physical stuff that you're doing, right? And I mean, game changer for me, right? Because I'm not in that constant pain all the time. And it's not consuming my every waking moment, right? And so you have tried to get me to, you're like, we could go once a month or every other week. And I'm like, no. And so, because, my weeks are very stressful anyways. And so I have now added this in my own mindset as part of my, weekly routine of what I do for me, right? It's an investment in me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I know just coming there, like last week when I was there, we targeted an area that we hit something else that we're like, oh, okay, something's a little tender, right?
Yeah.
And so, I feel at 55, there's always going to be something that's tender. So why not keep it moving?
Yeah. Well, we're putting our bodies through so much every week, every day, even if you're sitting, like sitting all day can just be super bad for your posture. So yeah, there's always stuff that pops up.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about EMDR, and let's talk about what that offers our clients in the veteran world. What does EMDR offer them, and how does it work?
Right.
Tell us how it works.
Well, even just listening to Brittany talk, I think about how we can kind of have contractions in the body. Something happens and it's overwhelming and we don't have the capacity to cope right then. And it's, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And we're kind of bracing against what's happening. All of that usually gets stuck in place in a trauma because that's the only option we have. Especially you think about children, they can't fight. They can't run away. They often just freeze. And the trauma that they may be going through just kind of stays in a frozen state. And that's what I love about EMDR is if you think of the trauma as being like off on an island, by itself, it hasn't been adaptively processed, but it's sort of wreaking havoc on the body, but it's out of conscious awareness. It's over there on the island. And then we gradually, and within a person's window of tolerance, we don't want to overwhelm anybody. We don't need to. We go back and we work with that material on the island and reprocess it adaptively. And what that means is that we come to realize that the thing that happened wasn't our fault. Doesn't mean anything bad about us. Doesn't mean we should have done better or stopped it or whatever the negative self-belief is. So then the body begins to take in that new information and feel more relaxed and more at peace and come to a different conclusion about the event. And it does that through what we call bilateral stimulation.
I just was going to say, talk about the brain.
It's the bilateral stimulation, right? So it gets the left and the right side of the brain to work together, the logic and the emotion. As you know, we hold buzzers in our hands, or we move our eyes left, right. And that sort of engages both sides of the brain. It's a very simplistic way of explaining this, but at the same time, to dislodge that material so we can look at it. We're bringing in the logic to that kind of frozen state and having a different perspective on it. Yeah.
Oh man. No, I don't remember what. Dang it. I had a question right there for it too.
It's okay. Let me just say one thing about
please,
it. So
go.
we're talking about the brain, and we're talking about, but a lot of times we're saying, so where do you feel that in your body? We're always directing people to be connected to all systems. It's the thought that I'm having. In fact, how do we set it up? We say, okay, so while you're thinking about this trauma, think about, it made me feel like I'm not good enough. And I feel this pain in my stomach when I think about that. And then I'm thinking about the memory. So we're lighting up all the systems, and then we process it with the bilateral stimulation, and things begin to shift, and things begin, I hadn't thought of it that way, right? A lot of times the brain knows exactly what it needs to do to chew it up and process it differently. And if not, then as the practitioner, the EMDR practitioner, we can introduce other thoughts, like, cognitive challenges, so to speak. But
So talk about, and for the life of me, I can never remember their name, the resources. 3 resources.
Oh yeah, the resources. So part of the work that I do is attachment focused EMDR. And with that, we come up with protectors, wise ones, and nurturers. A lot of times if a person has a traumatic experience, but very shortly thereafter, they get protection, they have nurturing, and they have someone to guide them, or sources of wisdom. It doesn't sort of stay stuck in the body in the same way. Most of the time we don't get that. A lot of times with trauma, there's a lot of shame. We just try to pack it all down, stuff it away. We have to go on with life. And when we're doing EMDR, we're bringing in the felt sense of protection. So we come up with protectors, which could be anything the person wants it to be. It could be a lion. It could be a military personnel. I mean, whatever you want it to be. Same with nurturers. You create your own. And then you kind of have them at the ready as you're reprocessing the trauma. So we bring in one of those resources, and then we re-script the memory. And it's kind of like the body-mind system doesn't know which version is actually true, but it does begin to relax. Yeah, if I'd had that, I'd have felt like this, and I wouldn't have thought there was something wrong with me. So I love the model of attachment-focused EMDR.
So, okay, so break this down. So how does the brain do that?
How does the brain do that?
Meaning, like, okay, if I would have had this, maybe I would, and give you that different emotion that you never have had
So
before.
we've opened up the memory, right? You're telling me about a person is telling me about a memory. And I think how the brain does it is while you're talking about the memory, we've got these buzzers going left, right. So both sides of the brain are engaged because they're working with the central nervous system. So we've opened it up, and we're bringing in this bilateral stimulation, and it just processes it differently. It's not frozen in state anymore.
And I think
I just got a question from the chat.
Yeah.
If you guys don't mind.
Sure.
Kylene would like to know, with like the trauma and stress holding it in the body, where do most people feel that? Or is there a more common place?
For pain or for either one of you, go ahead.
Well, I found that it really varies, but because I've also found that as people that I've been working with have been resolving trauma, and they might say, as I'm thinking about that memory, my lower back is really hurting. And as they keep processing and they get the upset down from like a 10 to a 0, for example, they're like, I don't have back pain anymore. So it could be anywhere, because I'm going to say one more thing about that. So there's someone I was working with, and their trauma was they were up on their tiptoes begging mom to come back, just as an example, and their calves would hurt. That's where they were storing their trauma, directly connected to that. It's not always that directly connected, but yeah.
What's your thought?
I have a book that I read. I could heal your life, I think I could tell you. And there's a whole dictionary in the back that says if your foot hurts, it means this. If your back hurts, it means this. If your knee hurts, it means this. And it relates it to an emotion. I've seen the biggest one I've seen on my table is like either stress, like it seems to be stored in the core a lot. Like, oh, we're going to your core. Are you super stressed? Or the jaw. So the jaw gets super tight if somebody has something to say or something they're not saying, or something like that. So I see a lot of that, and a lot of stress being stored in the core. But yeah, I got that whole book, and it's like
You
each
Can Heal
thing
Your Life, I think it's called.
by Louise Hay.
Good one.
You Can Heal Your Life.
Yeah.
I was like, and there's like a whole dictionary of each body part meaning a different thing, and then they give you like an affirmation for it. So apparently, yeah.
And also in EMDR, you have an opportunity as you're going through EMDR to look back at yourself as your current self, right?
Yeah.
And as your younger versions, right? And so it's just an opportunity. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's such an important part of EMDR, or it can be, when we're like, if we're looking at ourselves as a younger person, a 10-year-old or a 21-year-old, and we're saying, oh, the knowledge I have now, I can, using my imagination, share it with that part of me while the bilateral stimulation is going on. So something begins to settle in us. Like, I don't feel so upset about what she went through because she's got me now and she's got other resources. And I learned from that. So it really brings things into perspective. It really brings in a very good way.
I've heard it worded like your subconscious, like depending on what you were saying, doesn't know which one really happened.
Which version is true.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can go back and rewrite it and bring in and feel those emotions and kind of rewrite the story. But your subconscious just doesn't know which one was the truth. It's all about the feelings and what you're putting out.
And what I find is it's such a beautiful opportunity to go back with compassion, because so much of what we go through is then almost locked in with shame. We feel like we have to hide. We feel so bad about the bad things that happen to us, and we're blaming ourselves. And then to re-script it, like you said, to bring in a different version, bringing in an older, wiser, compassionate part of us is really powerful.
Yeah. A piece for me, I just want to talk is, looking, it took a second for me to understand, looking back at myself, right, of what that looked like, right? Or for me, in my sessions, I have this little elephant. Her name is Bee. Well, she can be either big or she can be little, right? But she always makes me smile, right? She does the silliest things. And anytime I think about Bee, it just makes me laugh, right? And so I was telling William Bruck this the other day. And because when you wake up and you're like, okay, because I was having nightmares, right? And I was having those nightmares when I was coming to you. So that was part of the problem too. And, through the EMDR process, you can learn that, that is not reality, right? You can use those resources when you're awake to go, and B she'd always find a way to, I swear she'd be like jumping up from I'm here, you know what I mean?
Love it,
and
love
it just changes my whole perspective of, because in my head, but I love the fact that she is me.
Yes.
That's the part that took me a long time to grasp, right? That I thought she was just something, but she is me.
Yeah.
She's like, she's a part of your psyche that was kind of maybe tamped down or laying dormant. And then she came to the surface as you began processing adaptively your trauma. Yeah.
It is so
She's
crazy.
a very playful part of you. And she fits different roles, doesn't she?
But yeah. It's so crazy. But the reason I want to have you two on here today, right? We want to talk about the combination, right? Yeah. And so it is just physical pain plays such oh my gosh, a horrible on you mentally, right? You can't sleep. The list goes on and on and on, right? And so and through that process, it stagnates the healing, right? Because your body is not in a position to be calm or receive things, right? And so talk about that stuff.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. If you're in pain, you can't think about anything else or you can't move. So like people be like, well, I've gained weight or I've been able to exercise or I've been able to do the things I want to do to be healthy because I can't move or I'm in pain or everything hurts. And then what I've kind of learned with the emotions too is like, if you're with the minerals, if you're deficient, it could be harder for you to have the energy to let it go. So just being out of pain, maybe in a little more balance with your minerals, like just give your body some more energy to let that go.
I think too that, and sometimes it can, of course, there's a lot of pain involved with trauma, but it's also sometimes just more subtle contractions, the way we're carrying ourselves through our day in a sort of guarded way, because we're not quite sure that we're safe. You know, logically we know we're safe. We're looking, yeah, I'm safe. But our body is like, am I safe? Am I safe? Our body's keeping the score, right? So sometimes I think there's that kind of sensation of trying to go through life being relaxed, and I just can't relax because I'm just not sure I'm safe.
And that is why I keep my weekly appointments with you, right? Because it's an investment in me. Especially for the position I'm in and stuff like that. But the mental, I got the word anguish stuck in my head, but it is, you've done so much for me mentally, not only physically, but mentally. Like I don't even have that pain at all in my, that bar has disappeared, which is amazing. Which has helped my sleep.
But if you weren't doing the EMDR and you weren't working on your stress in that way, we could still be, working on that. So I think that's a huge part of it as well, is that stress.
Of the combination.
Right. Like if you weren't doing one part or the other, each thing might take a little bit longer to do. So you working on your stress, because stress plays a role in everything, and you can store that anywhere. You just be tight. Everything can get messed up with stress. And including the minerals as well. And so I think what I did help, but also you were with Mary Beth, learning how to deal with that stress. And I think that made a difference. If you weren't doing that, we could still be working on that bar, because you just have not known how to deal with the stress.
But the combination together was just, I mean, it's such a great combination. And we've talked about, one of our goals is to be able to get you out here, right? To have somebody sponsor along the way, to have you out here one day a week to work with the veterans in the program. Because I think what you do is, it is not massage therapy, right? It is really targeting it. And I have to laugh because every time I'm on a table, she just lightly touches me, and I was like, do you know that's the really tender point? I don't know how she finds it, but she finds it every single time, right? And she's like, I'm just barely touching you. But then she gets it to release, and you can feel it release, right? And it's, to be able to offer that to our veterans, I think would be absolutely phenomenal, right? Because I believe in, again, what you're doing, is different than, because you're targeting that pain, right? I think, which is so different than the massage therapy.
Right.
Not that a good massage therapist isn't needed from time to time. I'm ready for one. But targeting the pain is just,
it's a whole different.
And I loved finding it in areas where I wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, you go to a massage therapist, they're probably not touching your jaw, probably not touching your core, probably not touching back behind the shoulder. I mean, maybe a little bit, but probably not as painful as it is. A little bit, So all those different areas. But it's an absolute incredible process. I think both of them are. And I think being able to offer something like that to our veterans and their spouses, eventually down the road, would be so beneficial, right? Because
recovering from trauma is no small thing. And if you can work at it from both angles, I think it's a dynamic duo kind of a thing. It's really,
And then to include with her having the chemical imbalance, is mineral imbalance,
minerals,
not the chemical imbalance. I might have a chemical imbalance too. I don't know.
Minerals, that's huge too.
So what is your favorite part about what you do?
I like when somebody comes in pain, it's a puzzle. I think that's what I liked about accounting, was you had all your pieces, you use the puzzle, put it together. So when someone's in pain, it's the testing. Where do you start? What do you do next? Finding all the parts and pieces and like putting it together and being like, this is what's going on. Here's what to do. And just figuring that out.
And I know we briefly touched on this a second, but you give your clients homework too, right? Because you want them to feel better. You want to give them the tools, right? You're not like, oh, come see me every week. That's not how you work.
No, I mean, and if your posture's changed, like your spine's changed and you're more forward or more back or whatever it is, and say it's coming because you sit all day or you sleep in bed posture or whatever, like seeing me once a month isn't going to fix that. And so I try to give, tools, stretches, corrective exercises to go home and, one, work on correcting your posture if you can, but two, things to do so that you're kind of training your brain, that muscle memory to change what they're doing. So if you're like this all day, see me once a month isn't going to do a lot. So it's about how do we open back up and do those things. And so that, hopefully you feel better through the in-between time of seeing me, and then we can get you to a maintenance or whatever the goal is.
So during both EMDR and your process, right? Like my sleeping has changed in the fact of, like, a lot of times when I sleep, I'll cup my arms in there, right? And I'll bring my shoulders in, and I'll be like in this like protective, like just the snuggle spot, right? Stress, right?
Stress, yeah.
And then, but now I'm aware of it,
Mhm.
right? Whereas before I wasn't aware of it, right? And so even like when I start to do that, and like I can bring my hands back out, but then I bring my shoulders back out and I open back up, right? And to even be aware of that, like, because my body just automatically does it when I crawl into bed, right? And so just trying to change some of those habits of years and years of trauma and aches and pains. And but I love having those tools. I love to go, because instantly when I go from here to like here, I'm like, I can feel better.
Do some
right?
belly breathing.
Belly breathing, yes.
Do a little belly breathing. You can probably talk about breathing a little bit more, but breathing's huge too.
Yeah. So she had us do this belly breathing exercise at BNI, I don't know, a few weeks ago or whatever. And it's
Take a deep breath.
Right?
Yeah.
Take a deep breath through your chest or through your belly, right?
Yeah, did your chest go up? Did your belly go up?
Right. And so she's like, all my clients, their belly should have went up. And I was like, not mine. It was my But I know, talk about that. Talk about how the belly breathing, what that does.
Yeah. So when you breathe, you can be chest breather, belly breather. Chest is more fight or flight, and belly is more like the rest and digest. And so you just want to take that deep, calming breath. Sometimes if a muscle can't release, they do a couple breaths, the muscle will let go. I tell people to do it before bed. It can be calming, or if they can't sleep, it just helps to calm that nervous system. And you could probably talk more about breathing.
I've been a fan of breath work for quite a long time, and now I've been learning biodynamic breath work. And I just find that it goes into the subconscious. It goes below the conscious awareness. It takes you into places in a good way, in a way that it's at your own pace, but that it just helps those releases stored in the body. They may not even know are there until you actually get into breath work. And then you notice, oh, what's this pain in my back coming up? Let me just be with it. But you're being very nurturing to the pain. We want to bring in the pain and befriend it. We don't want to like push it away. We want to be curious about it. So it's that kind of a process of coming back home into your body.
And I love how you, and you've said this like through some of the EMDR, like is the curiosity. Be curious.
Be curious,
right? And it's a totally different mindset, right?
And I say that because I think, one of the pieces of this work that I love the most is helping people come home to their body. And that means being curious about what we've been through, being curious about our feelings, not, sort of carrying on with the shame or the whatever, being curious and welcoming all those parts home, to where then we feel more whole. When let's say
Less
I have
judgy.
anger come up, less judgy. If anger come up, oh, why am I so angry? I don't want to be an angry person. But then if I get curious about the anger as part of, the EMDR process, I get curious about it and I have communication with it and I welcome it home as an important part of me. Look how that anger's helped me. So we just start to feel more whole as we welcome all those parts of self back.
I love when I'm talking to veterans and, people say, well, just don't do that. Just don't think like that. Right. I mean, if it were that easy,
Right.
none of us would have trauma, right? We'd all work through it. Right. But it's really
stored. It's literally stored in your body. And if you don't know how to work it out,
it's crazy. And I think probably one of my biggest takeaways from my EMDR is the opportunity to have a choice. Right. Because when you're stuck in trauma and you deal in that trauma every day, right? Whether you actually, when you went through it, but then you just marinate on it, right?
Well, when it's stored, every little time that happens, it just keeps building, right? Like if like a sadness emotion gets stored as a kid, every time you're sad, it just builds on that,
Right.
right? So yeah, like you said, you just kind of marinate in it, and it's
Because if sadness and shame, if they fire together, they wire together. So now every time I feel sadness, I feel like something's horribly wrong. I feel shame because it's associated with the trauma.
But just as simple as knowing that you have a choice, right? So like two things really stand out is that I have a choice. I have a choice, again, when I wake up, and thank God I haven't had the nightmares that I've had. I've had some dreams, but they haven't been anything like they have been, right?
Yeah.
And I'm actually able to sort through some of them, which is pretty amazing too, right? But to have a choice, just that simple of a word, right? To finally get your brain to know you have a choice. You get to make a choice in this, right? And then there was another part where when I was going through a trauma piece is because I'm a veteran, I wanted resolution instantaneously, right? So I wanted mission accomplished. The only way to get through this is if I end this trauma with this result, right? That's how I was thinking of it, right? And through the process is there's no timeline, right? Because you're reworking the process, right? And that in itself takes some time to understand that there doesn't have to be an answer today. There doesn't have to be an answer tomorrow.
Right. And it's also kind of like not being curious. It's like, I got to fix it. I got to get it done right now. And that's how our human brain is sometimes versus the process of healing is curiosity, compassion, welcoming. It's two different processes. Yeah.
Yeah. Compassion. So we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. Is there anything else that you guys want to add to this? Anything else you want to, what do you love? Go ahead.
I just love what you were talking about, being at choice. Being in our bodies and being able to feel comfortable in our bodies again is the whole goal of trauma work, body work, right? To where we are at choice because we're connected to our deeper wisdom, because a lot of the beliefs have settled down. And when something happens, we still note that, okay, I don't like that, but I'm at choice. How will I respond? That's because we have a more regulated central nervous system as we recover from trauma. And that is a gift to give ourselves to get back, to get to that space. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a total rewiring of the brain. It's crazy. It's crazy that, that you can just transition that thought process like that over time.
Right.
Yeah. And so in your civilian practice, if you will. So what is is there like a traditional, like clients come see me for 6 weeks, 10 weeks? I know here in our sessions, we have the 50-week program for the veterans. And so it's 10 weeks in each phase. So what is there an average of?
I wouldn't say there's an average because a lot of it depends on the type of trauma. Like I was working with someone who had been in a car accident and was injured and couldn't drive. And that probably took maybe 8 to 10 sessions. Where if it's developmental trauma, that while I'm being shaped and formed, my identity, I'm being neglected or abused, that usually takes much longer. It could take a few years. It can still be effectively worked with, but it really just depends on the type of trauma.
Yeah. And that it's taken me to this thought, like, because what I started with was today's trauma and garbage, right? My most recent garbage at the top of the cup, right? But it's crazy how we went back to the beginning of my garbage, right? And realized that what happened to me at a very young age changed the trajectory of my life, right? And to see that now and work through that process, right? Like the decisions I made after that trauma played out till my time in EMDR, right? And it's so crazy to think that, because people are like, well, what does childhood trauma have to do with it?
Everything.
Yeah.
Because if my childhood trauma made me feel like I have no worth or whatever it is, right? Then I'm going into the world trying to prove my worth versus being connected to myself and that I already have worth and going from there. It's huge.
Same with physical trauma too. If you have a broken bone as a kid and you're now 40 years old or whatever, like that injury could still be what's causing the pain today. So even old physical traumas can stay until you work them out.
That's amazing. Well, you guys, I mean, we're through it in an hour already. You guys are amazing.
fast.
Yeah. I'm so excited. I hope we get I'm glad we had some engagement with the audience tonight. And I hope we get some really great feedback on this, but thank you both so much for
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
It's been great.
absolutely love that. And we will see you guys next Wednesday, same time.